Hello and welcome to the Desert Tiger Podcast. I am your host here on the DTP. My name is Colton G, and this week on the show, Davey White and Pterodactyl Problems are out to prove that rock and roll is a drag. What exactly does that mean? Well, you're going to get a little description of that coming up very soon, but of course, before we get there, there's a few things we have to go ahead and do first. So, thanks to those of you who went and checked out last week's episode of the podcast, as I was joined by Canadian rock and roll and punk rock legend Biff Naked, as we discussed the 20th year anniversary of the Lilith Fair, as well as Biff's epic career in music and a few other things along the way, like an upcoming book of poetry that she has coming out. If you missed that episode, you can find it in our backlog, as well as about over 80 other amazing episodes. Also, before we go ahead and kick things off today, I want to go ahead and mention to you that today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by ilovedtp.com. Why is that? That's because over at ilovedtp.com, that's where you are going to go ahead and grab yourself some Desert Tiger Podcast merch so that you can rep the show everywhere you go. And today's episode is also brought to you by XYZ. XYZ! It's a clever way of me saying that your ad could go here in this spot. Email me over at desert.tiger.podcast@gmail.com and we'll discuss more about how you can become the next XYZ. Alright! Davey White and Pterodactyl Problems are out to prove that rock and roll is a drag. But not in the way that you think. No, this party goes far too hard for it to be considered tedious or slow by any means. Combining their sonic blend of jazzy, blues-infused metal and rock with a DJ curated dance party and some of the East Coast's finest drag queens, rock and roll as drag is just one of the many key swoops that Pterodactyl Problems plans on making in their quest to revive rock and roll from the edges of extinction. The group, which started as a high school connection of like minds with different influences, just couldn't lie down and fossilize after the members would reconnect a few years after graduating, finally releasing the songs they wrote when they were teenagers, then evolving with new music, which can be found on their latest album, Esoteric Hobbies, which we are also going to discuss today. Today on the show, I'm just joined by Davey White, lead singer and rhythm guitarist of Pterodactyl Problems, and we are going to discuss what brought this high school band back together, their latest album, Esoteric Hobbies, and what went into its creation, and of course, the most rocking, badass party that you may possibly ever find in the TO. All of this and more, including a few tracks off of Esoteric Hobbies, on today's episode of the podcast. And this first track actually happens to be the first song off of Esoteric Hobbies. It's a song that Pterodactyl Problems released a music video for earlier this year in February, which is a fantastic watch, might I add. It's also something you're going to be hearing about later on in today's episode of the Desert Tiger Podcast. This is Paresthesia. change. Unpack your baggage, get dressed in the same.
The Desert Tiger Podcast.
All right, DTP fam, we are here with Davey White. Davey White is the vocalist and the guitarist, rhythm guitarist, I guess you would say, of Pterodactyl Problems, located out of Toronto, Ontario. And they want you to know that rock and roll is a drag, but of course we're going to get into that a bit later. How's it going today, Davey?
Hey man, I'm doing pretty good. A little sleepy. My feet are a little bit cold, but I'm pretty darn good.
A little bit sleepy, but I guess those cold feet might keep you awake, though, right?
I think they are. Yes. Most effective.
All right. Well, we're here today to talk about your band Pterodactyl Problems. From what I can see, you guys actually originally formed the band a few years ago, and this is the second run with the band. So what was the first formation like? How did you guys end up meeting each other, and where did things sort of end up?
Well, we all met back in whatever year we were all in middle school. I think it was like grade 7 for us, 2012, I think. Yeah, we all went to like a hippy-dippy alternative school, and we needed people to play music with. And we were the ones who were there. So we started playing music, and we sort of wrote some songs together and started a bit of a band. And, you know, as all middle school bands do, we played the talent show, which was horrifying. We still have footage. Yeah, and then Kieran and I, the bassist, we ended up going to a different school for high school than Jack and Oliver, so we kind of went our separate ways. And then we met up again a couple of years ago, and we re-recorded an old EP, and then we decided we kind of liked working together, and it was fun, so we kept at it.
Wow, so you guys actually formed back in middle school, and unlike a lot of people where their high school talent show, middle school bands really don't end up going much further than that, you guys ended up because of the high school situation, were forced apart, but afterwards, just through music, ended up finding each other again.
Yeah, it's true. I think the grand trajectory of my life happens to do that to me a lot. Like, it reintroduces people who I used to know and people that I used to like be close with back into my life. So yeah, it was kind of a fun surprise being back with these lovely folks and stuff.
It's funny how time can be cyclical like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So back in middle school, did you guys find that you had such an eclectic taste of music back then? Because I find, like, through my research and through listening to the music, there seems to be that meld of a heavy style and that softer rock style, which seems to fit very well together.
Oh, thank you. I think, well, like Jack the lead guitarist, and Oliver the drummer, they're definitely coming to the band with some like heavier influences and some more metal and some more like heavy rock. I do listen to some, but it's sort of like 90s grungy stuff. Like, I really like Pearl Jam and all that kind of stuff. And then Kieran is like a bit of a music nerd. I don't know how to say it. Likes a lot of different stuff, but likes it, like some Cole Porter, some jazz. She's obsessed with Jacob Collier right now. So yeah, I mean, when we met up, I think we were more cohesive than we are now.
Okay.
But back then, we were like, we could get together and play some like basic rock music, because that was all we knew how to play, really, or all I knew how to play. And now things, I think, have changed a little bit, perhaps for the better. So.
Oh, I would think so. So the first EP that you guys ended up releasing was actually songs that you had written back in that initial run in middle school.
Yeah, man. Yeah, there were
wow.
three of them. Yeah, 3 of them were old ones, and then the new one was Spreading Fear that we wrote for the EP.
Okay, so in between that time, what were you doing musically?
I was doing musical theater. That was like the majority of what I was doing, and I was doing some sort of singer-songwriter stuff as well, because I enjoy strumming an acoustic guitar and singing words. That's a party. But it was mostly, yeah, like performance, musical theater, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was doing that with Kieran as well, who went to the same school as me, like doing like strings and stuff like that, playing some viola. And then Jack and Oliver, they had a band, and they still have a band going with the two of them. What is it? Death metal? What is it? Death metal. It's a death metal band.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what we were doing in the meantime. So we definitely like went in different directions for sure.
But still, in the end, those two different directions end up meeting and melding once again back in 2017.
Yeah, who doesn't like some death metal musical theater, right, Colton?
Right? I'm a huge fan of the idea. I mean, I don't think most people who have ever like seen Iron Maiden live just realize just how much theatrics go into that show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's true. If you're doing something like that and you want to make it good, you gotta go big. You gotta go theatrical.
Yeah, and that's something that definitely I can see through some of the live videos that you guys have posted, is you definitely try and bring a lot of stage presence to your live show as well. A lot of no standing still, a lot of trying to make sure that you're engaging the crowd at all moments.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we sort of like we're all kind of relaxed folks, but I think we decided a while ago that we didn't want to all wear black on stage and play like our heavy rock and roll. I think we're all kind of bored with that. I mean, Jack definitely still likes it because Jack wears all black, but we love Jack. He's a guitar god, you know what I mean? Like, everybody has to do what they do. But yeah, we have fun. We want to give people a show, because otherwise they can just listen to a record. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. They don't have to come. But if they want to be like, ooh, this is fucking cool, they should come see us live.
Well, exactly. And if you're just standing there playing the music, they might as well just listen to it at home, because then they don't have the annoyance of everybody there. If you're moving and you're enjoying the show just as much as everybody else, why shouldn't they?
Amen. Yes, agreed. We try to share that. Yeah.
Okay, so coming into Esoteric Hobbies off of the self-titled, like we said. The self-titled EP was a lot of songs that you wrote in middle school. Maybe the musical talents, or maybe the musical ideas, themes, and ideas, maybe a little more limited, maybe a little more restricted, just based on the time and where you're at that point in life, being in school, having so many other things going on. So What was the difference going into Esoteric Hobbies after you guys have had so many years to evolve as musicians?
Good question. What was the difference? Well, I think we all knew, like, the really nice thing was, before we were happy playing sort of like, how would you say, the pop music of rock music? You know what I mean? Like, you're kind of the simpler stuff, the more listenable stuff. And I think when we all came back together, we realized that we were good enough as individuals to come together and make something sort of wacky and awesome, and still listenable, but like out there, enough that it catches people off guard sometimes, and that it sort of delights and surprises, like us, for sure. That's where we started, just making ourselves happy. So I think it was mostly just having some confidence in ourselves as individuals, coming back here and being like experimenting with the sort of ideas that we'd gained individually in our time in our different fields and stuff. Yeah, that, and I mean, Jack gained like a huge amount of knowledge about like the recording process and stuff, and tone shaping for guitars. Like everybody just had gotten a lot better, and I think we were willing to put ourselves out there more this time.
No, definitely, because the evolution between the two albums, the like self-titled, definitely still good, but Esoteric Hobbies, like, it just catches you, it grabs you, the riffs on the songs just pull you in, the choruses just like are groovy. It's an entirely different monster.
Yeah, I really that the recording process and everything to do with Esoteric Hobbies was sort of rushed, and it was really us putting the pedal to the metal and what's it called, the axe head to the grindstone, and just making it happen. And I really like it, and I'm looking forward to the next record, taking our time a little bit more with it, and stuff. But I am really happy with how it came out. Yeah.
So how many of the songs off of this album were tracks that you guys had crafted beforehand and brought in?
How many of them were, like, do you mean like as a band? Like, how many of them were songs that we all made together?
Yeah, because you guys had some time in between hand, so maybe some of these, like I'm saying, like, were some of these songs something that you had written in between hand and then realized maybe these would sound better in a full band setting, whereas now going into this next album you have more of an opportunity to write as a full band?
Yeah, for sure. So I think you might be able to tell which songs are which just by listening to them. All the songs that start with a big, fat, chunky riff, those were basically songs we wrote together. And if it started with like some wimpy guitar, it was probably a song that I had written previously and brought to the band. Like, I think that's pretty fair, right? Yeah, I think that's, yeah. They're agreeing with me. They're all here. They're all standing and listening to me talk to you. It's great. Yeah.
Well, say hi to the band for me. Hey, guys.
Hi.
Oh, hello. So you're saying a song like Constellations was probably something that you brought in after, like, you brought beforehand, but songs like Paresthesia and Protest were songs that you guys crafted together.
Yes, you're right about the first two. Protest was a song I wrote acoustically originally. So I guess actually now that you say it, that is the one. I think that is the only thing that falls outside of what I said. And Jack wrote Slideshow, but that counts as it was written before the record. Oh no, it was written for the record. No, it's true. Yeah. Protest and Slideshow are the only outliers. But yeah, you pretty much nailed it.
All right, so let's take the studio of EH. So EH was produced by Jeff Hodgman. What did he have to bring to the process of this album?
Jeff Hodgman is the fucking man. We need him back in our life. He's a very busy individual with a beautiful family, and for the record, he recorded, he mixed, and he mastered the whole thing. And he also, I mean, he produced for sure. Because I don't think you can do those three things without producing. I don't think it's possible that you can like sit there without saying anything. You know what I mean? Especially with a bunch of jackasses like us. But yeah, it was like a fast process. How long did it take for drums? How many days? It took 2 days to record drums for the entire album because Oliver is a wizard. And then it took us like a while more for guitars and bass, and then vocals I did on myself, like basically at home, with this piece of shit, like $100 microphone.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I know, and I only realized, get this, I only realized at the end of recording every single track, I like looked up what it was, and people were like, "This is a piece of shit," and I was like, "Oh fuck, I recorded the entire album on a piece of shit." Anyways, but can you tell? I mean, I can tell sometimes there's some like some S's and some T's in there that hurt my ears. But I mean, overall, it was okay. And Jeff really brought some really good stuff out of us, and he was super supportive and good and helpful in being like figuring out who should play what and making everybody feel really comfortable. Yeah, he's a really funny, super easygoing guy. And if anybody has thousands of dollars to drop on an album to pay somebody to help them with it, they should pay Jeff Hodgman because he's great.
Glowing review for sure. And yeah, definitely I'm sure there's limitations to using the microphone as well, but there's definitely points in the album where I'm sure that the like way that the album sounds helps it, especially like that break in Paresthesia just before like the solo kicks in. I feel like where you jump in with that kill yourself. I feel like the microphone maybe helps in moments like that where the energy, you can really feel it.
Yeah, that's true. It definitely has like a very particular sound that did I for sure made the album sort of sound like what it is vocally.
All right, now that we've gotten a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at the recording process of the album, I want to dive a little bit into some of the songs on the album, some of the singles that you have released so far off of Esoteric Hobbies. But of course, before we get there, I actually want to spin another track off of that album before we get into those details. And before we do that, I want to take a small break just to, pay a few bills, take care of a little bit of business. But don't worry, we're going to be getting back into things right away very soon. And first off, before we get there, I want to go ahead and tell the listeners, that's right, you guys, of the Desert Tiger podcast about ilovedtp.com. And that is because ilovedtp.com is the place where you are going to go ahead and get yourself decked out in the latest and greatest of Desert Tiger podcast merch. so that you can rep the show every single place you go, in front of your friends, in front of your family, and hell, even in front of your enemies, because they can't stop you from chasing your dreams and from supporting the Desert Tiger podcast. Oh, well, you do so, and the best part about it is when you go ahead and get that t-shirt from ilovedtp.com, the proceeds go straight back into growing the show that you love, the Desert Tiger Podcast. It's a win-win situation for everyone involved. So why not go ahead and grab yourself something from ilovedtp.com. New items coming very soon, possibly even a 2-year anniversary sale. Oh, keep your eyes open over at ilovedtp.com. I also want to take a quick moment to discuss with you, the listeners of the Desert Tiger podcast, about X, Y, and Z. Do you love the flavor of X, but wish it had the healthy benefits of Y? While all at the same time having the nice, easy going down texture of Z? Well, let me tell you about XYZ, because if you haven't figured it out yet, it's a clever way of me saying that your ad could go here in this spot and possibly be heard by thousands of people across North America, and heck, even maybe a few other places in the world. So, why don't you go ahead and email me over at desert.tiger.podcast@gmail.com, and we can go ahead and discuss those details and how your product can be heard by all of the listeners of the Desert Tiger podcast. Yes, I think it's about time we gave another track a spin off of Pterodactyl Problems' latest full-length album, that of course being Esoteric Hobbies. And of course, it's a track you're going to be hearing more about very soon once we continue this conversation with Davey and the rest of the team over at Pterodactyl Problems. And of course, it's something that you can hear when you go and check out Pterodactyl Problems at Rock and Roll is a Drag. Maybe it's one of those tracks that's going to get you hyped up, going to get you going, bouncing off the walls, going a little bit crazy.
Because crazy wants what crazy wants, and crazy knows what crazy knows. And I'm not sure if you agree, but now I know crazy. He said he could never look away while someone hurt themselves. He said the kick is so sublime that he just can't close his eyes. Now he's dying on the inside. Crazy wants what crazy wants, and crazy knows what crazy knows. And I'm not sure if you agree, but now I know crazy. wait till you find out. You can leave because he's weak.
The Desert Tiger Podcast.
So let's talk about some of the tracks off of this album. Let's talk about one of the songs that we were actually just talking about, Paresthesia. What does it mean to you and the rest of the band?
That's a good question. Wait, can I ask you a quick question? It's Colton, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay. I know the name. I just want to make sure I wasn't going to fuck up the pronunciation.
No worries.
Yeah, it was a song that I wrote most of the lyrics for the band,
Okay.
and the riff was sort of, it was brought originally by Jack, and we all helped instrument and orchestrate. Orchestrate is probably the wrong word. Arrange the song. And I wrote it about a friend. Originally, it was written about a friend of mine who I respect greatly and I think is an incredible person, and struggles with certain things, and it was sort of about her. And then, sort of as I wrote it, I started to realize that it was probably more about me than them, as so many of the songs I write sort of happen to be. So yeah, it's connected to her, and it's connected to sort of this feeling of powerlessness and sorrow that I sometimes experience over people who are in tough situations, and sometimes I'm in those tough situations. So I think it's sort of written about that and for to honor that in whatever way I can.
So it was written as a song about somebody else, but then you realized that you were actually writing about yourself using that individual as an expression.
Yeah, Colton, I'd say that's about it. It's sometimes that's what happens. Yeah.
No worries. So another song that actually deals with the trying to deal with people and seeking out damaged people and whatnot is Crazy. So I actually have found in the past that I've had a problem with doing that too, where maybe dedicating a little bit too much time towards trying to seek out damaged people and trying to help them when they don't want to help themselves.
Yes, that is so fucking relatable, my dude. Yes. yeah. I think that's something I struggle with, and it's something a lot of the people in this band struggle with. Possibly everybody. Yeah.
So I know that that's put me in some very awkward situations. So has that put you in any awkward, hilarious situations yourself?
Any awkward? Man, awkward for sure. Hilarious only occasionally. Trying to take care of people. Sometimes for sure. Sometimes my brain tells me that people are really struggling and really need help. Like my current girlfriend. She's somebody who's very grounded and stuff, and my brain just so often tells me that she's on the brink of some sort of terrible thing, and so sometimes it goes on high alert, and then she's like, "Oh, we want to get some food or whatever," and then I realize how ridiculous I'm being, but nothing nothing wacky. I don't think has ever happened. I don't know. Maybe somebody else has a wacky thing, but.
Definitely that song has a very sick ending as well. Freaking very rock and roll, very heavy, very catchy as well. And very good
cool.
mosh out moment.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, definitely. So something that you've been playing this album with, and something that you started earlier in the year, and something that you guys are actually going to be starting here in August. This episode itself is going to release in September, so you maybe, if you're in Toronto, you've missed the first one. What are you doing? Go up and hit the second one. You guys are doing an event called Rock and Roll is a Drag. So tell me a little bit more about this.
All right, so here's the fucking deal.
Here's the fucking deal.
God damn it. This is a goddamn deal. So first, it's a Sunday night show, last Sunday of every month. That's what we're doing. We start with a half-an-hour set from a cool local or out-of-town band that we think is going to pump the place up. They got the set. And then we have two drag queens coming in that are backed up by yours truly, Pterodactyl Problems. We play some fucking rock and roll for them to lip-sync to. They each have about a half-an-hour set, intermittent, because dancing really hard for 4 songs in a row is like incredibly exhausting, and understandable why they don't want to do it because it would be so sweaty. Oh, and also costume changes, of course. So yeah, they go back and forth and stuff, and that's about an hour, and then we close out the night, Pterodactyl Problems, with an original set for like 30 minutes, and then we have a girl DJ for the rest of the night, just spinning some funky tunes and shit.
Oh, wow. So not only are you inclusive in tunes of the different ways of music and everything else that's being represented, but it's also inclusive of different mindsets and different backgrounds.
Yeah, sir. Yeah. We really, I mean, we do some drag stuff ourselves on stage and shit like that, and drag queens are dope as hell a lot of the time, so it's kind of cool that we get to be on stage with them and work with them.
Oh, usually super cool people who are very dedicated to their performance.
Yeah, I know. Like, working their ass off all the time. So, like, yeah, it's just so much work. Like, as a musician, I have so much respect for it.
Definitely. And something that you have done with your own stage show is done a little bit of drag, so I can see how that gives you that extra level of appreciation for the performance that they put in.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely do some sort of, like, I don't want to put myself down, but some sort of like glammier, a little bit more simplistic drag than a lot of queens do, which is okay. I like it. Like, that's the stuff that makes me feel good. Still feels like I'm up on stage, but it is so cool to see them work and stuff like that.
Well, yeah. Definitely. And trying to play a full set, it would be hard to manage the costume changes and everything that would be involved to try and do it fully, you say. So, I mean, you're definitely doing what you can within the realm when you decide to.
Yes, this is very true. Yeah, no, but when we get to play stadiums, that's when we'll start doing costume changes. But for now, we'll keep it simple.
Until then, Jack, Oliver, and Siren are definitely going to have to work on their fills so that you can work on the costume changes in between.
Exactly. That's exactly the plan, yeah.
For sure. So I've seen in some videos that you play dressed as a man, and some shows you play dressed as a woman.
Yeah.
So what goes into that decision? Is it something that you plan ahead of time? Is this something that you're feeling the day of and you decide to go for?
That is a good question. I mean, I think depending on the show, sometimes I will plan it ahead of time, like if I know if there's something specific I have in mind. But oftentimes I'll just kind of open my wardrobe or my drawer of things that I like wearing on stage, and I'll kind of pick a few things out. And if it happens to be feminine, it happens to be feminine, and if it's masculine, I can roll with that too. I think generally I'm wearing feminine stuff on stage a lot of the time, for a number of reasons, for like image reasons, but also because it's just a different thing to see on stage, which is part of what we want to do. We want to show people things that they're not used to. But yeah, I don't know. It's pretty whimsical, and it's pretty spur of the moment.
Well, and it also continues to support that idea of individuality, because like we've said, Jack likes to dress in his black and do his thing, while at the same time it's completely okay for someone else to be doing something completely different at the same stage, but both worlds can completely work together.
It's true, yes, yeah, and we I think we fought that for a while, and we tried, like, with some people we worked with, they tried to make our image a little more cohesive, coherent, and then we were like, no, this isn't going to work, so we went with the sporadic, like, wacky kind of stuff, which is just who we are, right? As you say, like, it's the individual stuff, it's what we love to do, and, like, we don't really want to forsake that just so we can kind of look like the version of the band all in black, but instead we're all in, like, wacky colors. Like, we don't care enough to do that. So, yeah.
Awesome. Definitely. Is there any plans to bring this wacky, powerful, incredible stage show to the road at any point?
Do you mean rock and roll as a drag specifically?
Well, even just Pterodactyl Problems on the tour itself, but I mean, even if you guys could somehow pull that off, I'm sure that would be accepted and supported by many communities as well.
I think you're right. I think we're in the works for figuring out an East Coast tour right now, like
Ooh.
East Coast Canada mostly, but because getting into the States is a process. Unfortunately, we wish it was slightly easier, but there's some visa stuff involved. So that might be another time, or it might be this tour. But yeah, we're working on stuff, and we're going to be going to Montreal. What is it, September? End of October to actually do a few shows and to do a Rock and Roll as a Drag show there in Montreal. So if anybody's in town for that, please come. I'm sure there will be some sort of like craziest outfit prize. I think there's going to be one in Toronto too in September. So if you come, you are encouraged to be yourself, but be the most out there, fun version of yourself that you want to explore together with us. So come to the show in Toronto. Come see us in Montreal. Come to the tour on the East Coast. We'll be there.
Awesome, definitely, and I definitely suggest that people go out and support it, even if you plan on traveling through Toronto and just so happen to see that you're going to be there on that date. Why not make it part of your travels? It's one of those memories I'm sure you're not going to be able to get very many other places.
I think you should, if people are in town, come out, see us, and come talk to us, because we'd like to think we're a nice bunch of folks. So, yeah.
So we mentioned earlier that you guys are working together to craft what is next, the next release for the Pterodactyl Problems. So what is that process at right now, and how has it been like?
So the next record, which is untitled currently, we've been working on demoing some stuff. We've been applying for grants here to record the album. Oh no, there's a dog. Sorry.
No worries. We love dogs.
Yeah. We've been applying to grants, and we've been demoing stuff, and we're going to keep doing that until we get money for the album, because we will get money for the album because we believe in ourselves. And I don't know, it's been good. We're all getting restless to write it for sure, because, for people who get to hear the album, like that, or albums that artists put out, they've already been dealing with that album for a year before the consumers or the listeners get to hear it. So like by the time we did our release party in March, we were already like over it. Like, no, we like the album and we like the songs, but we were like, we need to get into the studio and we need to start recording again. So we're pretty restless to get in, but we just got to get those grants first, get the songs all demoed, and we'll be flying.
Oh, definitely. And if some of those Canadian musicians who are listening don't know about the grants, maybe they should start looking into them, because having the possibility of up to half of your project covered is huge, and definitely you need to build a repertoire before you're able to get accepted for that as well.
Mm-hmm, yeah, but even if you're like an up and coming group, even if you're starting off, definitely just check it out, because there's like the Factor grants in Ontario specifically. They're like big players, but I mean, like, there's more grants than that. Take a look, see what's out there, because people will give you money because they want you to do art, and take advantage of that if you can.
Mm-hmm. Almost every province has a program of their own to help musicians in their own areas create art that they can help push.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about Pterodactyl Problems. I have one more question for you before we go, but before we do that, where can the listeners find out more about Pterodactyl Problems?
I mean, everything we touch goes on our website at pterodactylproblems.com. That's pterodactyl with a P and then a T, as every pterodactyl truly is. And we're Pterodactyl Problems on Instagram, on Facebook, on every sort of music streaming service there is. And then I think we're Pterodactyl Band on Twitter, but we don't use Twitter, so don't follow us there. Yeah.
Fair enough for sure. All right. So last question. Earlier you mentioned that you guys maybe had been fighting embracing who you were and the individuality and everything else. Maybe there's somebody listening right now who is having a little bit of trouble embracing who they are. Maybe not on a stage role, but maybe within their own life. Do you have a message for that person?
Man. Like, good luck. And it's sort of tough to find the people sometimes, but there are the people out there who will like see you and hear you and be fine with who you are, and like you will love and who will love you. You just have to find those people, and if they're not around you right now, that's really hard. And I'm sorry, but if you look for them, you will find the people to be, the ones who accept you, the ones who can be your new family. You'll find them.
Wow. Thank you.
Party.
All right. Once again, thank you so much for joining me here today on the Desert Tiger Podcast to talk all things pterodactyl problems.
Yeah, no worries, Colton. Thanks for having us.
And with that, we are coming near the end of another exciting episode of the Desert Tiger Podcast. But don't worry, of course we have more episodes coming your way, and I'm going to be letting you know what's coming on next week's episode very soon. But before we get there, I need to give one last huge shout out, a big old Desert Tiger thank you to Davey and the rest of the crew in Pterodactyl Problems for joining me here on today's episode of the podcast to tell me all things about the band, their latest album, Esoteric Hobbies, and of course, Rock and Roll is a Drag. Which, of course, if you're one of the listeners of the podcast and you live in the Toronto area, or maybe you plan on traveling through Toronto in the near future, maybe you want to see if you can fit Rock and Roll is a Drag into your upcoming schedule. It happens on the last Sunday of every single month. And of course, right now, that means that September the 29th, it's going to be going down. October the 27th, it's going to be going down. And every other last Sunday after that, you know what's happening down at the Hideout in Toronto. That is, of course, Rock and Roll is a Drag. And this month, September the 29th, Pterodactyl Problems will be joined by a fellow band Strange Breed, by DJ Girl DJ, and of course by drag queens Aro Nova and Kurt Cumstain. That's right, it is going to be the most happening party going on in the TO on September the 29th, possibly within the entire month of September, because that's how they roll. Of course, I also have to go ahead and thank Eric Alper for setting up this interview. Thank you, Eric, for another amazing guest, another amazing conversation here on the Desert Tiger Podcast. You know that Eric has been helping us out a whole lot in the last 2 years. They've been running things, and I couldn't be more excited for this partnership. Hopefully, I get to meet Eric in the near future. When I go down to Toronto, maybe I'll also meet Pterodactyl Problems. Who knows what the future holds? Maybe beautiful things. And of course, talking about beautiful things, I should probably go ahead and thank you, the listeners of the Desert Tiger Podcast, for tuning in to today's episode of the show. Maybe you're new. Maybe it's your first time tuning into the Desert Tiger Podcast. Maybe you want to consider going ahead and hitting that follow or subscribe button on whatever service you happen to be tuning into the show on, whether it's Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, whatever your poison is. Hopefully, Desert Tiger is about to become a staple in your listening pleasures. And of course, maybe you've been here for a while. Maybe you've been here from the beginning. Maybe you joined somewhere midway along the road. No matter where you joined the Desert Tiger podcast, I am so excited that you've joined. And I please ask that maybe you head on over to Apple Podcasts or Stitcher and maybe leave a 5-star review for the show. 5-star review for the show helps us get onto the charts. It helps us get in front of new eyes. It helps us get bigger and better guests for the show. It is a win-win for both of us. Why not go ahead and go give Desert Tiger Podcast a 5-star review today? Maybe you enjoyed what you heard on today's episode of the show so much that you want to go ahead and consider sharing the episode on your social media, your Twitter, your Instagram stories, maybe your Facebook, or maybe you enjoyed the episode so much that you want to go ahead and tell somebody about it in person. I would be so ecstatic if you went ahead and shared this episode with somebody who you think would enjoy it just as much as you did, or possibly more. And maybe while you're doing so, maybe you want to go ahead and rep the Desert Tiger podcast with a t-shirt that you went ahead and picked up at ilovedtp.com, so that you can rep the show everywhere you go, in front of your friends, in front of your family, and hell, even in front of your enemies, because we know that they can't stop you from chasing your story, building your mountain, finding your glory. That's right, baby. It's a beautiful process, and trust in the process. And one thing that has been a process has been the last 2 years of building Desert Tiger. Something that started as an idea for me when I had a broken wrist. It's been 2 years since we've started the podcast, and a lot of things have happened, and a lot of things are continuing to change, expand, and happen in the future. So next week, we are going to be starting with a recap of the last 2 years of Desert Tiger. That's right, we are nearing our 2-year anniversary, and we're going to be dedicating the next 2 weeks of the podcast to highlighting not only my favorite moments, but also your favorite moments from the last 2 years of the Desert Tiger podcast. So if you have a favorite moment that you would like to see highlighted, go ahead and email me at desert.tiger.podcast@gmail.com, or you can message us on any of our social media platforms, on which you can probably find us at Desert Tiger Podcast or Desert Tiger Entertainment, or you can go ahead and find me, myself, Colton G, or Colton Geschwantner. It's pretty easy to find. I'm kind of the only one. So you can go ahead and message me with your favorite moments, and maybe they will make the show. All right, but until then, until the recap, there's still another week to go. So why don't you go out there, chase your dreams, go achieve something, try something new, build your mountain, climb to the top, enjoy the breeze, and find your glory. All right, bye-bye.